It has a long history, but basically it starts with a history of injustice and marginalization that was felt or perceived by the Moros. These are different ethnic groups in Mindanao. And it started back in the 1890s, late 1890s, when the Spaniards ceded the Philippines to the United States with the Treaty of Paris. And then eventually, there was a group, an armed group called the Moro National Liberation Front that emerged, asserting autonomy. And actually at some point in the initial part of the struggle, they were asserting secession from the Philippines. So the Philippine government had a peace agreement with the Moro National Liberation Front in 1996. But then there was another group that emerged, which is the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. And in 1997, the Philippine government continued or started negotiations with this other group. And that's the group that we recently signed, the Philippine government signed an agreement with in 2012.
Maririnig po natin ang tinig ng isa sa SAF Commando na nakaligtas mula sa engkwentro. Masama raw ang loob niya at ng kanyang mga kasama sa tila pag-abandona sa kanila ng mga tropa ng gobyerno sa gitna ng madugong laban na ikinamatay ng 44 nilang kasamahan. Jim Tria. Siya raw ang last man standing o ang pinakahuling napatay sa bakbakan sa Mamasapan, Maguindanao. Ang kanyang bangkay nakuha pang may hawak na 2 granada. Patunay raw na handa siyang mamatay kaysa mahuli ng buhay. Lakbar! Lakbar!
One of Asia's deadliest and longest-running conflicts may have just come to an end, as Filipino President Rodrigo Duterte signed the Bangsamoro Organic Law, which grants partial autonomy to the Muslims in the south after a 5-decade war. 150,000 have died in the conflict between Moro Muslims and the government of the Philippines. But for Moro Muslims, it's part of a centuries-long struggle for self-determination. The Moro minority makes up 5% of the population of the Catholic-dominated Philippines. Islam was first introduced to the islands in the 14th century, and trade with Brunei, Malaysia and Indonesia led to the establishment of Muslim communities which fought 2 colonizers. First the Spanish, whom they resisted from the 16th to the 19th century in one of the world's longest anti-colonial wars. Then the US annexed the Philippines, including the Moro areas of Mindanao and Sulu. When the nation gained independence in 1946, it included the territories inhabited by the Moro people. In the late 1960s, the conflict between Moro and Christian communities escalated and peaked in the mid-1970s. The Moro Islamic Liberation Front, one of the biggest armed resistance groups, fielded some 30,000 armed fighters, and the Philippine military deployed up to 80% of its combat forces against them. Around 50,000 people were killed and there was huge destruction. Despite that, talks between the government and the Moros began in late 1976 and have continued on and off for decades, with the Moro Islamic Liberation Front as the biggest Muslim group. A deal was finally reached in 2014, paving the way for the new law.
So government found it more important to have peace with the MILF instead of spending billions of pesos in the purchase of weapons and ammunition, because to them, the war in Mindanao cannot be won by either side. Of course, we cannot win over government, especially on conventional warfare, but neither government can crush the MNLF and the MILF, especially when we resort to a non-conventional mode of fighting, which means guerrilla warfare.
The law signed by President Duterte would give the Moro people more control of their finances. 75% of the regional internal revenue collection would go to the Bangsamoro and 25% to the central government. There would be an 80-member parliament, and Islamic law would be incorporated into the region's justice system. But security would stay with the central government, meaning the Bangsamoro couldn't have their own military and police forces. The Moro Islamic Liberation Front would have to disband its army. Now people living in the areas of Mindanao covered by the agreement will get to vote on it in a referendum before the end of 2018. It could mean peace for a turbulent region, but would also not be the first agreement to fail.